Hello again. We're back at it with another 5 Blitz games on chess.com, playing against tough opponents, specifically using my chessable repertoire that I'm recommending. So let's go ahead and jump right into the games. All right, we've got a repeat opponent. We've played against Grandmaster Roberto Magranzini in a previous game. I think he was also white in one of the previous videos as well. So if he was white, I don't think he went for bishop d3. So here we're capturing on e4, playing our French defense, develop the knight to hit the bishop, c5 to strike at the center. Now, I think in one of the earlier games I had played knight to c6, but then I went back and double-checked my own course, and I actually realized that I recommended the move bishop to e7 instead. So we're just going to go with that. We're going to go with what I recommended in the course. So white goes for bishop to e3. I think we can actually make a claim for just castling here, quite honestly. Because if white takes the pawn, we do have queen takes d1 check, king takes d1, and then maybe rook to d8 check, knight to a6. I think we're inevitably going to get this pawn back at some point. So I could also just take on d4. I don't think there's really anything wrong with that either. He's going to take back with the knight, I would assume. I'm going to try castling. Let's castle here. If he takes the pawn, we'll trade the queens. He does play knight c3 instead. I think now I'll take the pawn. Could also go queen to a5 with rook to d8 ideas. Maybe that's also not a bad idea. Let's go for this. I'm going to go for a little bit of a cagey approach, going for this pin. Probably he goes queen e1. He does set up some knight d5 ideas that I have to watch out for. But I think I can take d4, and if he goes knight d5, I have rook takes d5. Takes back with the knight. Knight d5 is still met with rook takes d5. If I go e5, there's knight b3, which is kind of annoying. I do have bishop to b4. Maybe we'll do this. We might mess up the pawn structure for our opponent by capturing on c3. Got to pick up the speed here a little bit as well, but let's see what our opponent does. Bishop d2, we just take the knight on d4 with the rook. Bishop g5 doesn't work. Okay, here I think I will... If I go back here, there's knight to knight to b5 and then c3, which is annoying. Let's go to a6 actually. Okay, nah, I think I will go to ec7. Then I'll go here. I guess I have to drop back to this square. He can pick up a7. All right, this is not the most ideal setup of things, I will say. Can play rook d1. Okay, I'm getting chased around quite a bit here. He is going to have the bishop pair in a very open position with an extra minute on the clock, but if I get to play knight c6, I think I'm decently solid at least. If he plays bishop c5, I'll just play queen e8 most likely. Goes here to hit the b pawn, makes sense. I can go knight to d5 to hit this bishop though. Block off the attack on the pawn, and maybe I can play b6 and bishop to b7 if I get the chance. Probably just retreats the bishop to c1. Goes for c4, interesting. Alright, I guess I'm taking here. And I can't play b6 or anything like that. I guess we'll just attack the knight. Queen c5 I can take and bring the queen back to f8 if he does that kind of stuff. Goes for this. He does get to pick up the pawn. Yeah, we're in some trouble here, aren't we? Let's go queen b6 and offer a trade. If he trades, he can go knight d6 and then win material, though. Yeah, this isn't going so great. Knight to d8. I guess that also wins material, yeah. Okay. We're gonna at least play fast and see what we can do. No promises here. Just throw h6 in, I guess. Go here, threaten the pawn, maybe. I can go here and hit the bishop in this pawn. Okay. Move. Well, now I'm not... Oh, he still can play here, and... Bishop b7, there's rook d7. I guess I have to do this, and then... He has rook b8 and rook b7 or something like that. Let's attack his pawn, I guess. Keep this safe. Okay, I mean, I'm gonna lose this on time, but... Honestly, it's not the simplest win for him in the world. Play bishop f1 after this. He's going to go after the a pawn. Take here. f5. I was going to play f5 there. Probably definitely still losing this position, but yeah, not the end of the world. Computer says it's still +2 for white. Okay, gotta do better with that in a future game. So let's analyze the game though. So he went for bishop d3 this time. We hit the bishop. We strike at the center. Here we go for bishop to e7. It's a very equal position. I wasn't too concerned about white taking the pawn because, yeah, I figured I had queen takes d1, king takes d1. I was thinking about knight a6. Maybe white does have the move pawn to c6, though, which is a little bit annoying. So maybe instead of knight a6, we go... I guess we can check and then go knight c6. And we are down a pawn, but the doubled c-pawns are not fantastic for white. Knight to d5 is an idea. Knight to e5 is an idea. Yeah, black is doing okay here in terms of compensation. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking the pawn on d4 either in a case like this. Pawn takes d4, knight takes d4. This also looks totally fine. Okay, so instead, though, he didn't take the pawn. He played knight c3. Queen a5 we went for. Rook to d8 we went for the pin. Queen to e1. We do end up trading on d4. The slight drawback to this kind of position, at least for the moment, is that we do have a little bit of a hard time developing the queen side, especially because the pawn on b7 needs protection. But I guess, yeah, I guess we can go a6, bring the queen back to c7, something like this. And then the pawn's protected, then we can develop our pieces a little bit easier, and we don't have to worry about the knight to b5 ideas, which did end up being very annoying in the game, I will say. Because, yeah, after knight b3, queen c7, knight b5... Queen e7 was the mistake. Queen to c4 is apparently fine because I hit the knight and the queen. If he plays c3, I take the knight this time, and then I can continue developing my pieces. Okay, didn't see that queen c4 idea. Probably should have looked at that. After queen e7 and c3, we do just kind of end up in a worse position. And mostly the issue is developing the queen side, as we saw. Tried my best to deal with it. c4 was a strong move from him because he doesn't really care too much about the bishop on e3. He really just wants to get rid of the knight on d5 that's blocking the diagonal. Maybe in hindsight, yeah, I guess I could trade rooks and then develop or something like that. Might have been a better way of doing things. But anyways, though, knight d5, c4, we trade. He does just pick up the pawn on b7 after this mistake, and yeah, he just wins the rook in the corner. He's up the exchange and wins the game without too much trouble. Okay, so that's the first game. I think we beat this particular opponent in one of the previous episodes, but he got us in this one, so he got some revenge. Let's go ahead and get into our next game and see how we do in that one. All right, we're against a candidate master named Random Opening, rated 2637 from, I think that's Norway. Knight f3, c5, b3 for our Reti Nimzo Larsen approach, bishop to b2. And then here I'm going to go for the e3 approach. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think e4 is actually recommended in the course. I think that's actually what's recommended in the course. And we kind of actually turned the game into a Sicilian defense almost. He does stop bishop to b5. However, we can just go for d4. I think that's one of the ideas here. And we turn the game into a Sicilian defense where I think we just have a pretty decent position. If they take on d4, we'll take with the queen. Goes for queen f6. Interesting. So I can't take on c6 because my bishop on b2 would be hanging. So I'm going to go for queen to d2. I think he wants to play bishop c5, but then we can play c3. and I'm keeping an eye on the f2 pawn at the same time. I think I may have actually played this as black before, now that I'm looking at it. Definitely through a bit of a different move order, but yeah, so we're going c3. If he takes on d4, I take on b4. Am I missing something here? Oh, maybe I am missing something here. Pawn takes b... But pawn takes b4. Hold on. So I don't want to take the queen, because after knight takes, he threatens the fork. And if I take the... Yeah, if I take the bishop, he gets the fork. I can't take the queen. I can't take the queen, though. What am I talking about? If I take the queen, bishop takes, knight takes, and I'm just equal in material with the space advantage and the bishop pair. Hold on. Yeah, wait a second. This is just good, I think. It's probably going to play d5. Yeah. But yeah, I just have the bishop pair. Maybe in hindsight, taking with the king was a little bit better, but I have the bishop pair. I have a space advantage. He has a bad bishop. I would like to play bishop a3 at some point. Knight to b4 is actually kind of an annoying move that he's threatening here. Okay, with that in mind, let's go rook c1. I don't really care if he takes here, because then I have d5. Bishop d3. I'm going to play e5 now. He's probably going to play knight b5 here. Let's play a3 to keep the knight off of b4. Yeah, let's do that. I think he wants to move the knight and play bishop b5 at some point. Alright, let's king e2 or castling. Let's just play... Actually, like, let's castle. I gotta play quicker here for sure. So I want to go b4, knight b3 to c5, but he wants to move the knight. He wants to move the knight and play bishop to b5 is his idea. However, now I get to play b4. He can't go to c4. Now I get knight b3 to c5. He can't play b6 without losing the pawn. We're going to go here. If he goes bishop b5, I take and I take on b7. And now I'm just up a pawn. I'm going to put the knight on d6. He wants to go knight b6 to c4. Let's do this. Offer trade. And then I guess we will hit the knight. I also have knight takes b5 now. And I'm going to keep my a pawn protected. That's a free knight. I'm way down on time, but he's kind of just throwing pieces at me. Oops, that was a mistake. We'll take that, though. Let's not get mated on the back rank. Let's go here, here. Just moving fast at this point, honestly. Trade the rooks. We just want to win that bishop, or that pawn, sorry. I think we're just promoting the pawn now. Let's just push this guy. And we get the mate. Okay. He kind of, I don't know, he kind of feels like he lost his mind a little bit at a certain point and just started trying to play on my clock, but had enough time to get the job done. Okay, bit of a weird one. Let's analyze the game then. All right, so yeah, knight f3, c5, b3, e6, bishop b2, knight c6. Yeah, I think in the course that we recommend the move e4 in this position. Usually, as we've talked about in some of the other games and videos, when you're trying to decide where to develop the f1 bishop to, one of the, I would kind of say, main criteria is deciding whether you're going to play e3 or g3, or in this case e4 or g3, is does the bishop have a future on the c4 or specifically b5 squares? Bishop going to c4 is not that great. But now that the knight is already on c6, and especially there's also a pawn on c5, I do think bishop on b5 makes a lot of sense. Whereas I think if black had played, let's say, knight f6 instead of knight c6, playing e3 here doesn't make as much sense in my opinion, because we're not going to play bishop to b5 if there's no knight on c6. Like, if black just keeps developing, where do we put the bishop? Do we go to c4 and get hit by the pawn? Do we go to b5 and get hit by the a6 pawn? So usually one of the criteria is, does the opponent have the knight on c6? If they do, we're a little bit more leaning towards the idea of getting the bishop towards the b5 square. In this particular case, black stops us from playing bishop b5, but we go for the move d4 instead. Apparently d4 right away is not best. I guess in hindsight, c4 first is a bit better just to grab more space, and then we can play d4 later, I guess. But okay, I went for d4. He didn't know, I would assume he knew the theory here in terms of this queen f6 idea. Queen to d2. And yeah, bishop b4 wasn't the right move. Bishop to c5 is what I was expecting. I was going to play c3, and then apparently after knight e7, black is a bit better. Black is going to play for the move d5 in the near future. Our bishop on b2 and knight on c1 or knight on b1 are a little blocked in, but the game goes on. You know, something like this might happen, and you know, black's a little bit better, but the game goes on, kind of thing. So a little bit of a move order error myself in the opening. Should have played c4 before playing d4, but then he also kind of messes up with this bishop to b4 move, and then queen takes d4 doesn't end up being great. And apparently I also missed the ability to take on d4 with the queen, then take the bishop. I see. And then even though he wins the exchange, I'm also going to trap his rook. So, okay, I miscalculated there, did not see that this was a significant tactical error from my opponent. And yeah, I just took on d4 with the pawn. I end up with a better position after that, but taking the queen, getting the bishop, losing the exchange, but then getting the rook on h8 in the corner would have been much better, of course. So definitely some mistakes by both of us. He does play d5, which is good for him. Good for him to play, but we still end up with a better position. Eventually play e5, a3, castle. The knight a5 move wasn't so great because after b4, he ends up having to just go back to c6. Knight to b3, getting our knight into the c5 square is strong. He ended up losing the pawn on b7, and then he later lost the pawn on b5. And then, yeah, he's just down 2 pawns. He just started playing quick, silly moves here, trying to, flag me or something, but, we definitely had enough time on the clock to get the job done and eventually won the game later on. Okay, so 1 win, 1 loss so far. Let's go ahead and roll into our third one. All right, we get a very familiar opponent, Roberto Magaranzini again. Let's see if we can do a bit better. This is just pure coincidence in playing in the blitz pool. All right, so we've seen all this before. I'm going to try to do things a little bit differently here. So I'm going to go for, I think the computer was saying queen to c7 in this position. I think it also said castling first was fine, as we had already talked about, but I'm gonna do this queen c7 move. And then I'm going to go for a6. I assume he's going to play knight c3 at some point. Yeah, so I'm going to do this a6, queen c7 setup, which I think in hindsight is a better way of doing things, because now I keep protection over that b7 pawn, and we try to kind of untangle, from here. He wants to play bishop f4, I think. I think now we go ahead and take on d4. And then we can play e5, though. And now I think we're in decent shape. The knight has to go back to b3. Then we can play bishop to e6. And then we can play knight to d7. And I think we've got a pretty decent version of things. Especially, again, now that we've kept the knight off of b5 and we've kept the pawn on b7 protected. I guess he played h3 to cover the g4 square in case I wanted to use that. I think I'll go knight to d7. Knight c6 also makes sense, but then knight c5 is kind of annoying. So we're going to do this, put the rook on c8, play b5. We're going to go for this kind of approach here. b5, b4, maybe do something about the pawn on c2. And yeah, I think we're actually in good shape now. So we learned our lessons from the previous game. b5, b4 is the idea. If he plays a4, there might be some use of capturing the knight in the future at some point, but I'm not necessarily in a rush to do that. Goes bishop here. So if he takes here, the knight's going to take back and cover d5. So I don't think I'm worried about that. I think I'll just continue with my b4 idea. And okay, so now he is stopping me from playing b4, at least for the moment. I could still play a5. Knight takes b5, queen takes c2. But then he might later get the a5 pawn. So let's play h6 to poke the... I think we'll poke the bishop. I don't know if he plans on sacrificing. If he... okay, he wants to do this. Maybe bishop g3 to target the pawn. I'm not 100% sure. Let's go knight to b6. Or rook e8. Alright, we're going to go knight b6. Maybe get the knight to c4, which will protect the pawn and hit b2. He goes knight to d2. Let's go, I guess, rook to d8. He wants to go bishop g3, I assume. Then I have this knight coming back to d7 to defend. I think we're doing fine here. Maybe f5 and f4 can gain some space. Bishop g5 also looks like it could be very annoying for white. If he puts this knight on e4, we have f5. If he moves the other knight, we take on c2. So this knight's frozen. This knight can't do a ton. Queen is not in a great spot. f5 is coming, I think. Maybe bishop f6. Alright, well, I think the idea was f5. And I can put the bishop on f6 to guard this a little bit more if necessary. Bishop h5. Feels very weird to go there. I also have just bishop g5 for that pin once more. Maybe I'll just do that. And now knight c4 is seemingly a pretty big idea. If he goes to the d file... Okay, so he plays h4, but that does give me now the ability... I can take on d2 and then play knight f6, hitting the queen and the bishop. Alright, I think just for the sake of speed, I'm going to go for this. Alright, we're going to do this. Alright, but I have this knight c5 idea. This is what I... Or knight f8. I don't know if it matters a ton. Now I attack the queen and the rook. Take this, move over. Knight c4 next move. Rook to d6, queen to d6. I'm up the exchange. Guess we just go here and then here. I guess knight goes to c4. You take here, I have check. Excuse me. Alright, let's do this. We're gonna have to give up the exchange, it looks like. And we're going to lose on time to this Grandmaster opponent once more. Very annoying. Oh, alright, my rook's hit. Okay, alright. Not the best result against this particular guy. Alright. Okay. This guy's got my number today. Very annoying. Let's analyze the game. And, okay, so opening-wise, I know we come out with a good position here. After queen c1, we take here, we hit the knight, we develop. Yeah, we're already better out of the opening in this particular case. We learned our lesson from the other game. Go for b5, go for h6, knight to b6. Again, I'm just thinking way too long on all these positions. Rook to d8, black is still better. Knight here to guard the pawn. f5 is great for us. Bishop g5 I think is fine. Taking d2 is good. f4 is good. But I have only 25 seconds to his minute and 15. Yeah, my biggest issue is just the speed on all of these games. Apparently I should play knight f8 and then take the bishop afterwards. That makes a lot more sense in hindsight. You hit the queen, then you take the bishop, and you don't... Instead of winning the exchange, we end up winning a full piece, which is obviously much better. I took here, played knight f8, still came out of this with a material advantage, but start kind of wavering here a bit. Oh, knight to e5, I didn't even think about that. Knight e5 just forks the queen and the bishop, and then, you know, this would just be... oops, sorry, not that move. This would just be an extra piece, or an extra rook for us in this case. Alright, not the cleanest conversion. You know, I start making mistakes here. I have to give up the exchange. And yeah, now he's just up a pawn and better in this endgame. And, you know, because of low time, I make the mistake. Okay, not the best result against this particular guy. Let's keep going. Let's try to redeem ourselves in the last two games. All right, we're against El Doctor, 1989, playing white this time. Let's go for Reti, Nimzo, Larsen. I don't have any idea what f6 is about, to be honest with you. I mean, of course, he might be wanting to play e5, but feels very, very weakening. Generally speaking, against early f6 moves, I do recommend going for pawn to d4. And then I guess pawn takes, knight takes e5. I think in this particular case, I'm going to go bishop to c2, and then let's go for either e4 or c4. Probably just c4, I guess. Maybe e4 and then bishop c4 was better, but okay. We're going to now play a position where he gets dark square control, but we're getting light square control. I'm also going to just try to play for d4, to be honest. I think I'm just going to try to blast the center when he's done this weird f6 move and he's behind on development. If I trade here and trade queens, it's possible, but I kind of don't want to trade the queens just yet. Let's go ahead and develop to... I guess we'll go to d3. Seems like probably the most active location. Very odd play for my opponent. Knight a6 to c7, f6. Guy's close to 2700. Interesting. All right. I guess we'll castle. If knight goes to c6, we have d5. He's going to try to put the knight on c6. All right, let's just go rook e1. I don't want to play d5 and close the center. I am going to hold off on that. He's going to play bishop e7. Let's go queen to c2, poke the h-pawn. And if he takes on d4, that's fine. It opens up the e-file, and I'll most likely win the pawn back at some point anyways. All right, maybe now we will make the capture. Line up with the queen. Put the bishop on e4. Try to use the d5 square. Knight a5. Very odd play. I think he wants to play f5. What do we do about this? I mean, it might as well just go knight d5 and just dominate the d5 square, I guess. Trade that. He ends up with a really bad bishop on e7. I also have definite ideas of capturing on e5, and then even playing queen c3 and some queen takes e5. I'm wondering if that works right away. Like, what if I just go queen c3 right now? What do you do about this knight? If you go back to c6, I take the knight, actually. You take back, and then I can take on e5, pawn takes, queen takes, and I don't see how you stop mate without giving something up. So let's try that out. If you take on d5, okay, so my idea was this, and then this. And then next, if you don't take me, I can go knight to d7. He's going to take on c4. No, okay, I'm going to go here. Okay, I am up a pawn. It is opposite color bishops, but I am up a pawn. Alright, we're going to lock the queen side, keep all his pawns stuck on the dark squares. Let's move the bishop backwards, probably around to e5. Or I guess in this case back to c3. And we're going to try to use the kingside pawn majority going forward from here. Let's just get the king up here, put the rook here. Do this, I can put the bishop on e5 later on. Let's go here, Rook c7 check, and then try to win the b pawn. Alright, let's check, I guess. Now I take the b pawn next. Hit the bishop. Pin the bishop. Let's take a pawn. He's going to get those pawns. Let's block that off. Push the pawn. Alright. Just too slow. Too slow here. Very, very weird play from our opponent. But if I play too slow, it doesn't really make a big difference. Alright. Let's analyze it. So, goes for c5, goes for this f6 move, which is very odd. Bishop, so bishop b2 and kind of autopiloting here is not fantastic because, yeah, I guess in hindsight, black can play d5. And we've actually transposed into a position that we actually want to avoid in other variations. It actually ends up here if black had gone for, let's say, d5. If they go d5, I actually recommend the move e3 in the repertoire, because if we do go bishop to b2, then black does get to play f6, and we can't really stop e5. Interestingly enough, when he goes for this move order, he could have played d5, and then he's going to get in e5, and we would have actually been kind of moved into a bad version of things. So probably in hindsight, d4 right away, take with the knight, e5, move the knight away, try to check on d6, and if he plays d5, we have the move queen takes d5 using the fork on c7. So that would have been a bit of a better way of doing things, but we end up getting this position that's a little more on the close side of things. Still quite good for white. Still a pretty large advantage opening-wise. Bishop d3, castle, rook e1. Maybe, I guess, in hindsight, taking on c5 and queen to c2 right away is a bit better. Try to use the d-file, put the bishop on e4. Kind of what I did in the game, just I could have gone for it a bit earlier, at least what it looks like. But rook e1 instead, a3, queen c2, decided to trade. Yeah, maybe it's not the most precise way of doing things, but it is definitely good for us. Did play knight to d5 correctly. Should have taken with the c-pawn, apparently, and then this knight runs into trouble. That would have been very good to go for. I'm threatening d6, and if they block that I can push, check, and then just, win the knight on a5 in this case. Missed that pawn takes d5 opportunity. I was mostly focusing around controlling the d5 square. Went for queen c3, knight c6, take, take, take. So I did have this calculated correctly. And pretty much hit the best case scenario for him does end up being an opposite color bishop in game. He should have taken on c4, and then I would have still been up one pawn and a rook in game. If he takes on c4, pawn takes rook to d7 probably, and we're still up a pawn and better. He went for bishop to e6 instead, and now we're just up 2 pawns and a rook and an opposite color bishop in game. And yeah, this should just be a relatively straightforward win, quite honestly, but down on time, doesn't make it easy. And, I'm playing all of this well. Should have apparently taken on g5, but, we're still up 2 pawns. Now we're up 3 pawns. Now we're up 4 pawns. I shouldn't have let him take on c4. I should have tried to trade the rooks, then take the pawn. Now we're up 4 pawns with an easily winning position, but okay. Let's try to finish off at least our 5-game stretch with a win. Not continue the loss streak here, but yeah, let's go ahead and get into the 5th one. All right, we're against Izik 2000, rated 2656, and I'm going to play d4 to stop him from playing e5. Here, let's go for the move c4, striking at the center. We're going to take the pawn. And we're playing almost like a very, very good Queen's Gambit position, because usually in these Queen's Gambit positions, if we go d4, c4, and take the pawn, black should usually be playing e6 or c6 to recapture, not using their knight and getting it chased all around. So I think we're already quite a bit better opening-wise here. Good space advantage, develop pieces, looks pretty good. Let's go for... I think I'll throw in the move a4 here just to poke the knight with a5. If he takes on d5, I'll play the move a5 first. If he does this, now I will play bishop to e3. And now he's weakened the b5 and b6 squares, which is a little bit of a troubling situation for him. Now, for example, I'm threatening to take on c6 and then get rid of the queen that's protecting the knight on b6. I can also take on e6. Probably taking on e6 is even better. Yeah, I think e6 is just a huge mistake. He needed to take on d5 as far as I'm aware. I think I'll take on... I don't know. Does it matter? I'm gonna take on e6. My idea is to trade the queens and take the knight. And I'm also threatening to take on f7. So I think he's just already lost here, quite honestly. Even if he trades the queens and I take back, there's really not even a good place to move the knight to. So hopefully here we do convert this one and get the win. I don't know. I think his position is actually so bad here that he might even just resign. If I take on f7, like, he has to take with the king, and then he's just gonna get crushed as far as I can tell. Maybe there's other moves that are better, but I mean, this looks like it should just be terrible. I can take the knight and then check on c4. I can also just go queen to b3. I think this is just game over. Bishop e6, I have knight g5. Okay. Wish all the games could be that easy. So we get a very quick win in this game against this opponent. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. This one was pretty fast. We will analyze it real quick. So okay, against knight f3, our opponent goes for knight c6. Here it is very important that we don't just autopilot with the b3 move, because then black gets the chance to play e5. And even though in the previous game I did not play d4 to stop e5, which in hindsight I should have done, pretty much in all of the Reti, Nimzo, Larsen, styles of playing the opening, pretty much any time that black is hinting at the idea of e5, you want to play the move d4. You don't want black to be able to play e5. You want to prevent that. So after knight c6, he wants to play e5, so we go for d4 to stop that. And then here I recommend going for c4, and probably black's best move is to play e6. And this kind of just turns it into a Queen's Gambit declined type position. But usually in the Queen's Gambit declined, black does not put the knight on c6. It's usually not great to put your knight in front of the c-pawn when you're playing a d4 versus d5 pawn structure. Because now black can't use the c-pawn to attack the center, and he can't use the c-pawn to protect the center. The knight's just kind of in the way here. Instead, though, he played knight f6, which is even worse, because now we get to take the pawn, we get to kick the knight, we get to kick the other knight, and we just end up with a big space advantage and lead in development. He goes for c6. I'm happy to see that a4 is the top move. I wasn't 100% sure, but it ends up being quite strong. And if he had taken on d5, my idea was to play a5. That was at least what I was leaning towards. And then after he moves the knight, take the pawn back, and I think his pieces just look really bad. These guys are all just kind of boxed up. Apparently we can also take back on d5 right away, which is also good. But yeah, he ended up going for a5. Bishop e3 is very strong. If he does take on d5 now, we can, again, take back. And the biggest problem for him is with the inclusion of a4 and a5, he does weaken the b6 and b5 squares. So now bishop to b5 check is a problem in some situations. Also, the fact that his queen is stuck protecting the knight and there's no pawn protecting it, that ended up being a big factor in the game, as we saw. So him playing e6 was a huge mistake. Apparently taking on c6 is a little bit better, but this is still very, very good for us. He moves the queen. The biggest issue is if he tries to trade the queens and then take the pawn back. Oops, sorry. Take the queen back. The problem is that his knight's undefended. And it's all because we kind of encouraged him to play the move a5 a little bit earlier. Now the knight's unprotected. He can't take the pawn back on e6. So he moved the queen to keep the knight protected. We take with check. We fork on b3. Probably other moves are good too, of course, but yeah, queen to b3 is the simplest. You just are going to win a piece here, and black is completely lost. So yeah, we get a nice little 12-move win to finish things off on. So I think we finished here with 2 wins, 3 losses. 2 of the losses were to the same Grandmaster opponent. Grandmasters are strong players, tough to beat. But yeah, I think in terms of the rating start and stop for this particular episode, I think we started off on, let me double check here. We started off at 2661, and we finish off on 2652. So that is a loss of 9 rating points. Not the best, but not the worst in the world, of course. So we'll continue the climb in the next video. Hope you enjoyed this one. Again, if you want to look at any of the chessable courses that focus on the repertoire that I'm playing here in these videos, you can check out the link in the description. And yeah, hope you have a good rest of the day. See you in the next video.